Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News. It's Sunday, January 25th, 8:30 a.m. And we are in the middle of yet another roller coaster of emotion news cycle coming out of Minneapolis over the shooting of another protester by members of ICE or whoever it is. Somebody has shot this man, and the outrage is ratcheting up. This was actually written, what we're talking about, to address an article a couple of days earlier, which was a protester who says he was treated very badly by the ICE unit at such and such and such. We are not even going to bother with Mrs. Good from the first shooting because her background has made her very unpleasant and unattractive to cross over to the mainstream, whereas this new young man is what they're trying to hit mainstream gold with, but once again, will not occur. And we are just going to talk about how media runs these issues. So, this issue is not about immigration or ICE. It's not about a guy or an arrest or a one night in Minneapolis. It's about modern media manufacturing and outrage. Not saying that people being shot is not outrageous. However, when you look at the underlying issue, which we will address in a video after this, you'll see what we're talking about. But what the media does is they selectively arrange the truth until the audience feels something before it understands the actual situation. And that is why this unlawful arrest detention that I'm talking about is the easiest to understand. And you can then go forward or backward into these other cases or as new ones coming up. Okay. The story of how what we are talking about is a routine federal detention that was turned into a constitutional panic using a uniform, the Purple Heart, and a camera lens. So the story that is presented, and you can look it up because I don't want to give the guy any more credit, but it was done by a major, I think it was NBC, but you'll see it. And the headline was Army vet detained by ICE for 8 hours and denied an attorney. So you're already being guided, right? Army vet. The other one says Purple Heart. So Army vet, Purple Heart, 8 hours denied attorney. That is not neutral. That is not news reporting. That is a script because at the same time this was out, information was extant that explained the entire situation. So then they have a whole article on it. They have photos, and it's all old shots of the guy in his uniform. Photo, I guess he's in combat somewhere. Valor, sacrifice, front and center, going for the vet heartstrings. And you have to say to yourself, and this gets unpopular, especially around the vet bros, what does his military service have to do with the legality of a federal detention? Legally, nothing. Narratively, everything. Because the message isn't, this may have been improper. The message is, if they will do this to a hero, a veteran of the war, blah, 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 imagine what they're going to do to you, right? And we've discussed this before, but let's just keep reinforcing it because some people just aren't getting it. Now let's remove the music and the images and the flag and the Purple Heart, and we'll just talk about the articles themselves. He was detained during a federal operation. He was Mirandized. He was asked if he wanted to answer questions. He said, "No, I would like an attorney." The questioning stopped. All right. If you're in the world of legalities, the questioning stopped. He was not asked again. He was not brought back 2 hours later and asked again. He was held for approximately 8 hours, at which time he was released, and no charges were filed at that time. As far as I know, you can correct me. And I don't know why not. That matters a lot because under black letter constitutional law, once a person invokes their right to counsel, the law enforcement has to stop questioning. And that is it. They're not required to pull a lawyer out of their ass and turn him over to you. You don't really have to do the phone call on demand. You'll get it, but you'll get it when they want to give it to you. They are not required to bring in an attorney hired by a third party. They are not, meaning the feds again, required to release the detainee early. and there is no constitutional right to an immediate phone call in federal custody. You may be uncomfortable, it may be inconvenient, and it may feel unfair, but it is not by itself unconstitutional. As we have said to these dummies, you're dealing with the feds now. You're not dealing with Barney Fife. There are a whole different group of laws and punishments which you will receive, which is why when these kids get shot, they are like, oh, well, we rolled through George Floyd. You aren't. This is the federal government. They don't fuck around. Okay. So again, these articles, you'll see they quietly conflate four different legal concepts: the right to remain silent, the right to counsel during interrogation, the right to counsel after formal charges, general access to a lawyer or phone while detained. Okay, these are not the same things. But when you blend them together, the story creates the illusion of a rights violation without ever proving one. Okay, so if you notice what's missing in these articles, no constitutional scholar, no formal federal prosecutor, no judge, no case law, no nothing, just allegations and emotion and repetition. And that is not accidental because the visual argument is very important. The strongest argument in this story is not textual, it's visual. And anything I'm telling you about this now would apply to any other organization that had to protest for whatever reason or is trying to get themselves in the news to spread, hopefully, positive messages to get rid of these pieces of garbage, right? The strongest argument in this story is not textual, it's visual. I said it twice. I should say it a third time because they say it three times. The strongest argument in this story is not textual, it's visual. The repeated uniform photos of this defendant do a very specific job. They shut down the skepticism, they short circuit legal analysis, they turn a procedural dispute into a moral one, which is why, in the other case of the church people, where that guy in the beard who talks a lot of shit, he started telling everybody he's a veteran because it is a good moralizer. I'm a veteran of the war. I'm better than you are in the moral ladder because you did not go to the war. That's what it comes down to. It used to be when General Grant ran for office, it was waving the bloody shirt. Okay, so you're taking this and turning it into a moral dispute. So imagine the same facts, but the subject, the guy who gets arrested, is a college activist or a random bystander or a contractor filming on a sidewalk, or your favorite, a piece of garbage socialist actor who comes from a very good family in upper New York state somewhere and just hates mom and dad so much they decide he or she has to do this kind of stuff. There's no uniform, no Purple Heart, no Valor language. Would this be national news? No. Which is telling you something very critical. The imagery is carrying the story, not the law. So then you have an escalation period. The article widens the lens. Other attorneys have alleged similar treatment. Thousands are detained, masked agents coming out of the woodwork, right? The Insurrection Act, military on standby. This is a classic move. A single disputed incident is used to suggest that there is a systematic abuse going on, that authoritarian drift is coming our way, federal repression, the concentration camps, all that bullshit, all the things the Joe Biden administration promised us would come true under the Trump administration. So the reader is left not with a bunch of facts, but with unease. Oh, they banged this war hero up. What are they going to do to me, right? That is the goal of these arguments. That is the goal of these articles. This kind of reporting doesn't just criticize the policy of the United States or standard operating procedure or the very laws of the federal government. It undermines the institutional legitimacy, which is what it's supposed to do. It is teaching the public that federal authority is arbitrary, that rights are conditional, law is a tool of intimidation. These are all things that were inflicted upon the United States citizens of the Republican Party or friends of President Trump's and such under the last administration. So even if you saw it back then and were like, yay, great, it's happening, they bring the story forward, and now it's your turn to bite the sandwich, right? But it's not going on like that. And once this belief takes root, every enforcement action, right? Every enforcement action becomes suspect, regardless of the legality. We talked about that in our on our website. They had an FBI agent who, when they realized they weren't going to run the first agent down during the shooting in a civil rights case, because FBI had become so conditioned under the last administration, especially, and not Trump, but the jerk off before him, that every time there was a city shooting or a state shooting, they immediately pursued an investigation for civil rights violations to either double the penalty or to coerce the city or state judge to handle it, to give, come down hard, make sure the guy gets taken. That was not what this whole issue of civil rights violations was about. We discussed it in another letter. You can look it up, www.southfloridaconservative.com. It's on there. It's on Substack. It's everywhere, right? So what they're going to do here is they're making it where the average person who doesn't understand the law in the first place, not because they can't, but because they won't, but because law only works if people understand how it actually functions, you have this outrage built on misunderstanding, and that the government's not protecting civil liberties, it's corroding them. Let me tell you something real quick about civil liberties in the third world. If we had guys like this protesting in the third world, they would be in a ditch somewhere. They would be gone. They would be in a prison that you have never heard of or never seen and never will again. If you want to see, even, we'll knock them. Go watch what the Israelis get up to when you throw rocks at their cars. You're banged up for days, maybe months, because you are now under the control of the military. It's not the police force. Same situation here. You're not with the city or state police in Minneapolis who are going to let you take a walk because you're friends of the governor. This is a federal government who does not give a shit about you at all. You are an enemy combatant. You have crafted yourself into the position of enemy combatant. I would say urban terrorist, but I don't get paid the big bucks. Okay. So when you have a story like this, I'm sure most of you, if you're reading it or listening this far, are of a similar mind and highly, not even skeptical, convinced that most major media is a propaganda organ of socialism, because there is no calling it the Democratic Party anymore. It is straight up socialism. Here is a test that you can win drinks in a bar with. And somebody will say something when you're eating breakfast or whatever. That's why I have to keep changing where I eat my breakfast, because otherwise I'm going to be getting in fights all the time. Somebody will say this story that we're talking about. Were or are legal experts, not the weather girl, not somebody else. They joke about a couple of these other lawyers, but the thing is, they're legal experts, right? Or are they just participants? Is the law explained, or are they implying it? Freedom of speech. Well, what does that really mean? I can go break into a church, call them all shitbags, demand that they turn over one of their parishioners to my mob justice. That's my freedom of speech. Absolutely not. It is protected to speak, and there's a whole other bunch of shit that goes on with it. Doesn't mean somebody isn't going to punch you in the face when it's over. You are getting into the punch in the face time. So, would this story work without the imagery? If they just said some guy got his ass kicked or got hit with a baton round or whatever it is, would you care? Right? Is delay being framed as denial? Ask anybody that you know who has ever been arrested for pretty much anything on a Friday afternoon or after 6 o'clock on a Friday. When do you get out of jail? Say, hey man, I was gonna get I just got on a random thing. You don't get out till Monday because there's no judge. Now is that horrible? Right? You can't get a bail hearing, right? So I'd say most places, correct me if I'm wrong. So anybody who is doing anything wrong, threw a bottle against the side of a bar on a Friday evening, DWI, any of that stuff. When do they usually get out? They're getting out on Monday. 8 hours or 6 hours in a federal facility when they've brought in a bunch of other protesters. You've already been Mirandized, check mark. You've already said, I'm not going to talk, check mark. And you said you want an attorney, check mark. We'll get to you when we get to you. You're not of any good to the agents because you are not going to talk. And at no time did Jay come back 2 hours later and say you could talk. Did they put this guy in a room where he couldn't urinate or defecate? And they said, well, if you don't want to piss or shit yourself, come in here and let's talk about things. No, there are no issues of any of that because the guy didn't want to totally perjure himself because who knows, maybe he's getting some money from the government. Maybe he shouldn't have been out there, right? Which will bring you to the story of the nurse or whatever that just got shot yesterday. But we're not going to get into that now. I just want you to see the story because when you look at the story of the nurse guy, it's already begun. Loving, loving, caring, good to his pet, good to his parents. 37-year-old never been in trouble. Got in trouble that day, didn't he? But that's who they needed. They didn't need another angry lesbian who abuses their children. They needed a guy like this. This one's going to run. This is going to get legs to some extent until the next one comes up. Or until, and I had a big argument about this, not argument, but we disagreed about this yesterday with some people as to not the process that the ICE is using because they are using their whatever, their SOP, standard operating procedure for them. I said, well, the people are, first of all, they're stupid that are protesting them, and they are stupid because it's just fucking dumb. If you think you're an army to put yourself at the mercy of another army, I mean, and at the mercy, you're not too goddamn good, right? I would question my command and control. I would question the general in the field who says, go over there and get shot for the cause. Go over there and get arrested because you get arrested federally. The charges are different. The time in jail is different. Your life is over. You may as well go out somewhere and shoot yourself in the head. You're never going to get another job anywhere. And these other people that are nurses, they're fucked. You know, there's a whole bunch of background checks that go on with nursing these days, probably because of the narcotics. But this guy and his friends, and then the two up in New York, I don't know if you have seen, who refused New York PD, I think it was, got shot. Somebody got shot up there, and they weren't going to treat them because they thought they were ICE agents. Those people right there should already be at the tombs or wherever they have their jail these days, and they should have been arraigned. There are charges in there, you know, this whole Hippocratic Oath thing. So it would be no different, and I'll argue this, and your lawyer can tell me. It would be no different if you refused an ICE agent, if you're a doctor or a nurse, I am going to refuse care to him than if I said, and it's 1947, I'm not going to service these black people. I'm not going to, this kid's bleeding to death. I don't give a shit. This is a white hospital. We are not going to do that here. There is absolutely no difference in the discriminatory process on either of those cases. You may say there is, but I don't care what you say. Unfortunately, we've had to sit down, take classes, sit through seminars, all this nonsense, because most of these people have not gotten out of the third grade when it comes to their mentality. And some guys say, well, you know, you're weeding out the weak ones. At what cost? Because I'll say to you, let's say this, we're not going to talk about this shooting because there's a guy named Kagan Dunlap who I think has jumped the shark, who interjected, and you can go look online. I don't give a fuck about him. I don't know him and I don't care. But I saw the video where they have a little bit of the skirmish from this shooting with the nurse guy. And he's trying to tell you this, that, and the other thing. And I would tell you that he is not that guy. I barely like to go along with the guys that have been in Rangers or Special Forces because that's not their job. You know, hostage rescue in general is a designated hostage rescue team. Okay. I had a lot of questions about what they're carrying and not their operations, but the boilerplate dumb shit that you should do. Has anybody ever, I'll go off on a tangent on this. Has anybody ever seen the backs of Humvees or any other armored vehicle operating in like Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever? There used to be a placard on, I'd say all of them. I could be wrong, but I'll say all of them. In Iraqi, which I guess is Arabic, who cares? And in English, it says, stay back, whatever it is, 200 feet or 300 feet, or we will shoot you. And it says it in both languages to keep them away from bringing a car bomb and bumping you and blowing you up. That is on there for a reason. So when somebody tries to drag these poor privates into a thing, why did you shoot that guy in the car? And you say, dude, everybody knows you can't get within 200 feet of this thing. There's a sign on the back that says, don't get within 200 feet of this thing. You should know as an adult that can read English or Spanish that you do not get into the dog pile with people making an arrest. You aren't freeing this guy. You're delaying the inevitable. He is going to go to jail. You've seen the guy who was the who got in the country questionably as a and as was an activist. Now we're shipping his ass to Sudan or wherever he's going. All he got out of that, he's like, this is a big victory. It's like, no, you're on the federal's radar. You are an inevitability. It's just how long is it going to take those wheels of justice to grind you up? This is the same thing. This guy killed himself. There's no other way to say it. People are going to say you're cold because you don't have any sympathy for the cause. I don't have any sympathy for socialism at all. And it doesn't need to be here. And I blame the majority of the shit on the totally lax governments that we have had at the city, state, and federal level. Granted, at the federal and some we see Minneapolis, it was done by design. But it's happened. Let's deal with it. Let's get through this and move on. These people are realizing what we have told you on the issues of transsexualism and a bunch of other things. They have married their entire personal image to an unsustainable cause. It is not going to win. Socialism is not going to win. It's gotten where it gets, and it's helped incredibly by the media, which we have also seen bring up any other number of shitbag people because different media people don't have an original thought. So if Tucker Carlson, garbage can that he is, puts whoever on Hitler, Hitler will be on three other people that are just a little bit lower than Tucker because they're like, if he's on Tucker, the bump is in the name. I can get another 30,000 likes on this guy. So when you should just ignore the people, and that is fair to ignore them. Your freedom of speech only goes as far as it goes. Otherwise, people like our crew would be suing at the Supreme Court level that we should all have 500,000 viewers, which we don't, and we understand and we accept. Rather to have 1,000 smart people than 25,000 idiots, right? So that's where we're going with this. But like I said, that would be your simple test. Are experts quoted that are real? Look it up real quick. Take 5 seconds. Is the law explained? No? Then bullshit. Would the story work without the imagery? If not, then bullshit. That's why the nurse is being pushed so hard. You only saw pictures of that good girl, the lesbian, back when she was straight. And then one or two pictures with the girlfriend or wife or whatever. But they realized that was too divisive and he stopped showing that. They only went to the one picture on the beach. Did you ever realize that? Don't you think there are a bunch of pictures of her and the wife who was obviously a narcissist? There are photos everywhere. We just don't have access to them because they wouldn't play into the Mother Teresa narrative that they were trying to push for her. And that, and of course, burning their kids with cigarettes, right? So that is real. That's why I will say that was there child abuse. Nobody that I know as a woman has ever lost their children to their husband in a custody dispute. Always play that game, and you will find that there was probably some really horrible shit that went on because judges are always giving kids to the wife to the wife. All right, so These are the things that are going on. They're playing in your feelings, as Big Worm would tell you. So if people around you are just spouting the shit, if you want to be, you don't even have to, this is not combative. Just say, oh, well, what law is he breaking? Say, I break the law all the time. I don't remember that law, right? Shit like that. So the story, as we said, is not about whether you support ICE or you support this kid or you support the other kid, the war hero. And it's not whether or not you oppose the federal government. It's whether or not you want journalism or do you want emotional theater? Because that's what you're getting 9 times out of 10. And it's causing a lot of undue psychological side effects. And it is doing that. That is what people have warned about in the past. Right? If you remember the old thing about billboards, your mind cannot comprehend or collect all the information as you used to drive up and down the highway and see all the billboards. It was a study done on it. So this is no different. You're enforcing immoral or whatever amoral uh, traits onto people that don't want it. Your body is rebelling against it, for lack of a better term. So that's about all. Have a good day, and we're going to do this other issue because those of us here feel that the people making all these statements that are putting these morons out in the field to be shot should be held accountable. And what can we do to try to get that done? So that'll be in the next video. Have a good day. Talk to you later on.